To start with a little bit of a summary about the business where you were before we started working together. What was working, what wasn't working?
Yeah, so my business is I'm a carpenter. I'm still fully on the tools, and at the moment I have two apprentices. I think back then I just had the one. Yeah, I just had the one. So what was working beforehand? I do love what I do. I really do love what I do. I get a lot out of being on site and swinging my hammer, and um, I really enjoy it. So I do think I don't want to sound up myself, but I do think I do a good job. I think I'm reliable. Um, and I got plenty of work. I have plenty of work because I think I provided a specific value. What wasn't working, just the cash flow. The cash flow was, I just never had a handle on it. It was such a challenge. Like the bass, the bass was the big one. So I'd work like anything right to the end of the quarter just to try and pay that bass, and then all of a sudden I realized I'm fully behind on the next one. I did that quarter after quarter after quarter, and then you get to the end of the year and I get a big tax bill, and oh God, I can't afford that either. And that plays into trying to take time off at Christmas, plays into all of those sorts of things. It was a real challenge.
And how long have you been in business for now?
So I finished my apprenticeship in 2011, and I was so sure that I did not want a job. So I went out on my own straight away. I sort of floated around just subbing a couple of different builders and different carpenters at the time which I actually quite enjoyed. It sort of gave me a different perspective, working for different people, learning different things, different projects. I think it was good to sort of float around a little bit. Um, I got my first big gig with a big builder. I think it must have been about 2014, 2015, and it really took off. Plenty of work. I was sort of getting guys in to give me a hand when I needed it. Um, and then I think that's when everything when it really ramped up, that's when everything became really challenging,
Difficult.
financially. Oh yeah, well and truly.
Yeah.
Well and truly. I thought I'd just go for it and it would just work, but it didn't. I took it, it got really, really, it got pretty bad around the time my first son was born. Um, he was born super premature. He was born at 28 weeks. He spent the first 3 months of his life in hospital, come home with, oxygen tanks, and he was an extremely difficult baby. He really was, and we really struggled with that. Both, and my other son too. They both have special needs, so there was a. I really struggled in that part because I had this pull between providing for my family at work, getting on site and making the money, and providing by being at home and being there.
Mm.
And that was a big deal for me. So I actually got offered a job just when my first son was coming home from hospital. I got offered a job on wages, commercial mob. It was all the benefits, and I thought, oh, this is probably the right move. So I took it, and I hated it. I hated every single minute of it. And like that, they were a great company. They did some cool jobs, but I hated that it wasn't my own. I couldn't handle it, and I hated not having the sort of flexibility that I had before. Um, and at the end of the year, I clawed my way back into the builder that I work for now. And I actually started that cycle again. That first year I thought, no, I've got this now. I'm on track now. My accountant did my end of year tax, and I thought, oh no, I've done it again.
So all super, super common. I hear, as you mentioned,
Yeah,
I hear this all the time. So um, you're not special in that department. It happens
yeah.
constantly. So you would have been working for yourself in this up and down, chasing money for Baz for quite a few years. What probably,
Oh yeah, yeah. Quite a few years, and probably a solid 5 years of really, really struggling to keep up with it.
and then what made you look for a solution?
Um, to be honest, I think I was quite hesitant to look for a solution. I felt like I had to just figure it out on my own,
Mhm.
and I didn't really want to talk about it. Um, I probably hit it, to be honest. So I think that year of COVID had a lot to do with it. The 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 instability of that year. I mean, mind you, we were quite lucky. We got to keep working for majority of it. There was only a few weeks here and there that we had to stop. But that year, being so unsure of, am I going to be forced to stop? What am I going to do if I can no longer work? How am I going to, pay the bills and feed my family? Um, I burnt myself. I burnt myself out really bad that year. And I think coming into 2021, it was almost like I just sort of had my head above water. I'd knocked out my debts. I had a really strong pipeline of work, so I was moving along okay. But I knew, given that year of COVID, I knew I was one step away from falling right back into that bad trap. And it actually come up. I was talking to one of the chippies on site, and I said to him, I noticed you just made some changes in your business. You got rid of them and did this and that. And he was like, yeah, well, and I said, how the hell did you do it? Like, how did you know what's the go there? And he said, oh, I did this program, Profit First For Tradies. I gave it 3 months and I could see, this wasn't working. So I changed this and that. And I was like, so you did it because you like that, like I had to know more. I
Yeah.
had to know more. So, um, I forgot where I was going now.
So I was just saying that what made you change, and you were
Oh
saying
yeah,
about,
so
yeah.
yeah, so that that just that little description of I had this system in my business. I knew what was and wasn't working, so I made changes to suit. And I was like, oh well, I totally want to be able to do that because I've got all these. I was always so frustrated. I had these great ideas. I had these great ideas that I just couldn't get out of my head. And part of that was because I was so scared of just falling into more trouble
Hmm.
that I didn't want to make any moves. So I I ordered the book. I actually got it on Audible. I got it on Audible. I listened to it straight away. I think I finished it in about 2 days. I think I actually even listened to it twice. And I was like, this book was written for me.
Hmm.
Yeah, I just knew it straight away.
And you mentioned there that uncertainty, and you knew you were like one step away, and that's one of the things I hear all the time. It's like we're just living like week to week, job to job, and there's no safety net, there's no backup. And if
Yeah,
anything goes wrong, whether it be something like COVID, whether it be your builder goes bust, whether it be staff members sick, you sick, family sick, whatever it may be, there's such a fine line between, as you say, keeping your head above water to
yeah,
drowning. And that's
that's right.
one of the things that drives me most crazy, and something that just drives me to reach more and more tradies to make sure that we can
Yeah,
improve
that's
that.
right. That's right. And I think another big thing for me as well is that so I got offered this when my son was born. I got offered this job, and I thought, all right, this is the right thing to do, responsible. And in this job, it was commercial. It was a commercial gig, so it was good pay. Had RDOs, we had long service leave, all of these entitlements, and I moved away from that, and I moved away from that because I wanted more freedom and I wanted more in general for myself and for my family. So why would I move away from something that is potentially so comfortable and be worse off? It didn't
This
make
is
any sense.
Well, this is such an interesting point, isn't it? Because often we think that if we have more money, everything will be okay. If we have that security, everything
Mm,
will be okay. But that by itself is not enough. We need to have, in your instance, the flexibility of being able to go home if you need to, and that type of thing. And that
yeah,
is finding that balance, I think, is really important. And that's why we have so many people in jobs that they hate, because they think they need they think if they have that safety net that everything will be okay. But
yeah,
it's not like that. For most of us, we want flexibility, we want freedom, we want choice, we want all of those things, and we want the safety net as well. And it's how do we get that? And Profit First will absolutely help you do that. So I wanted to
Yep.
mention that you are in your car today. So tell me firstly a little bit of the story about the car, and then also how for every session that we have when you did the program, you were always in your car. So just give us a little bit of a backstory around that one.
Yeah. So the from memory, I think it was each Wednesday at 11 o'clock, say. And I was like, oh, well, that's easy. I'll just jump in the car. It actually didn't seem odd to me. It just seemed to make sense. So every Wednesday, 11 o'clock, jumped in my car. I had my young bloke Dan. I set him up for that half an hour or 45, whatever the session was. And that's where I did all the work.
And so, for those who think that they have to be in the office or they have to be in a quiet space or whatever it may be, you did the entire 12 weeks from your car and were very
Yep.
successful at doing it. So again, it was around that mindset. You could have thought, "Oh, I can't do it because I can't be home," or you
Yeah.
just made it work.
Yeah. And to be honest, I love my kids, but I cannot work from home.
Yeah.
I can't even write an email. My kids are there.
And I think that's something as well that so often I work with clients they'll work on out all day and then they'll go back into the office at home at night to try and do quotes and so on, and they might be in there for 3-4 hours and they actually get nothing done. And one of the things that Profit First does for you is to allow you to understand where your money's going, which makes that clearer, but also gives you a little bit more headspace to do other things. So rather than sitting in an
Yeah.
office for 4 hours trying to do something, you could sit in your car for 15 minutes and get the same amount of work
Yeah, that's all
done.
right. And I think it ties in with efficiency really well. It's so I thought, okay, I've got to take this portion of time out of my day to do this because I so want to do it. So I need to be more efficient for the rest of the day. And it's not like, hey, I just worked harder because, I took 45 minutes or an hour, whatever it was, out of the day. But I became more efficient. I became more efficient because knew that I had I knew that I had to be. I had less time on site, so I needed to. I wasn't gonna drop sales just because I was doing a program. Um, yeah, I became more efficient by sort of pushing my time down a little bit.
And this is ties in beautifully with Profit First. So in Profit First, we talk about something about Parkinson's law, so that we will have a certain amount of time to do a job, a project, activities, whatever it may be. And if that time is reduced, in most cases, we still get the same amount of work done. If it's expanded,
Yeah,
then we do the same amount of work, but in the larger amount of time. So that's a perfect
yeah,
example that you prioritize to do the program. You also prioritize to not drop sales or not drop your earning capacity as a result of having to take that time out, and was very successful at it. So
yeah. That's right. That's right. And
is
one thing,
that something that you thought you could have done before the program?
no, no, absolutely not. I had a mindset that um, if I want to make more money, I have to spend more time on site, and I've since um, like absolutely smashed that. So I used to work every weekend, every single weekend, overtime galore. Obviously, doesn't work when you've got young kids, and for a long time, and that would come back to that work life balance. It caused a lot of tension because I felt like I had to be at work. Um, and so I went back to sort of every second, and I got to the point where I was, all right, we have to cull the Saturdays, and I somehow became more efficient in 5 days a week than I ever was in six. And it's things like, oh, I should finish that right now, but oh no, I'll just do it tomorrow because I'm going to be here on Saturday. Just being more efficient with my time, and it's given me all this time with my family. It's been fantastic.
And so your boys are only young, so having time with the family was something that was important to you.
Oh, absolutely.
And again, you had worked weekends for kind of ever.
Yeah. So I started doing like little weekend jobs as an apprentice because I wanted to go and, make my own money and get more experience. And it was when I really ramped up, I thought I just have to run with this. It was just I was so zoned in on it. This is my one and only job,
Mm.
and I probably took it too far.
Very common though, very,
Yeah,
very common to think if I just do more work, I'm going to make more money, which is actually one of the biggest myths of the industry. Most of the time, if you work more, you're going to become less profitable. Because if you're not profitable at the start, you're not going to be profitable when you do more work and you're actually going to go
yeah,
backwards faster.
that's exactly right.
And so now you've got your weekends free, you're more profitable, you're doing more in the same space of time, and you've got much more headspace for other things
Yeah,
as well.
yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah. And so coming back to the car, as we said, you did all
Yes,
your sessions in the car, but this wasn't the car that you had when we first started. So tell us a little bit of a story around the car
that
situation.
the car. So the car I had at the time, I it was a 2008 single cab Hilux. I bought it sort of near the end of my apprenticeship, and I absolutely loved that car. It's like I built my whole business in that car. I remember bringing my old dog Sam home in that car. Like I remember pulling into the driveway each night, and the kids would run down the driveway, and they'd jump in and pile into this little single cab. We'd just back it up the driveway. Like it was, I loved it, and I didn't want to buy a new car, but having two kids and a single cab, it just didn't work, and it was very obvious that it didn't work, and it was something I probably should have dealt with a few years earlier, but I didn't want to borrow the money. I didn't want to borrow it. So one of the things that we did in our sessions, one of the goals that I put in there was to upgrade the car. So what we did was we looked at, okay, what am I willing to spend each week on this new car? What am I willing for my repayments to be? And with that, you can reverse engineer that into, okay, what is that loan size? Am I okay with that? Am I happy to go ahead with that? So we took that amount each week, and I started making mock repayments. So that did two things. I think it was over a course of a couple of months. It showed me that I was consistently paying for that every single week. So cool, I can afford it, I can do it, and I built a deposit, which was great. So I didn't have to borrow as much money for the car. Um, and I tell you, I didn't think I wanted a new car until I got a new car.
And
You
I'm sure
know?
it's much easier now with the boys to not have to be switching cars with your wife and so on when you want to pick them up.
Oh yeah, it's mate. It's like all right, cool. It's good for the business because I don't know. It's just a newer car. The older one was probably going to start costing me a little more because of wear and tear. But what it's given me just for my personal life has been huge, and it's been absolutely fantastic. And I wouldn't have done it otherwise. I probably would have argued with my wife for the next few years about not getting a car because I couldn't afford it.
And again, like with that, just knowing that you could, like the relief, knowing that you could make those repayments because you were already making those repayments as if you had the car prior to getting the car,
Yep.
then meant that you didn't have stress when you did get the car.
Yeah. So I went in and so I remember when I was an apprentice, I borrowed the money for that Hilux, and I just went and did it. And that having that loan, especially as an apprentice, it was a shocking decision. I should not have done that. I mean, but I did it and just hoped for the best. And I had to deal with it for years and years and years. And that's partially why I was so hesitant to do it again because I just didn't want that stress over my head.
Mm.
But like I said, it was time for an upgrade. It was something that I needed, for my family, just to be more efficient as a unit. And I went and did it with confidence.
And haven't looked back.
Haven't
And
looked
just
back.
again, the time that you've saving by having the car, not having to change cars, not having to think about even the mental energy, not having to think about, oh, I've got to tee it up with my wife to get home, switch cars, and so on. Like we forget
Yeah.
how much mental energy that wastes
Oh yeah,
and
it's just
was solved by that
unnecessary.
one.
Yeah, and along that as well, it is not just my wife's responsibility to deal with that. It's just not. I love my boys like anything, and I want to be involved in every single aspect of their lives. I don't want to be, oh no, I can't do that because I'm working, I'm doing this, I'm doing
Mm.
that. I want to be a part of it.
And that's something I hear. I speak to a lot of clients reach out to me when they are have a baby on the way or they've got very young children and then they realize that they're working all this time and they're never seeing their family, and then
Yeah.
family life is not so fun. And so that's a super, super common one that I hear all the time. So many
Yeah.
people just don't realize that there's a solution, though. And you're a
Yeah. Because
perfect
it
example
goes,
of,
yeah, because it goes very, very quickly. Like my oldest son started primary school this year, and I'm like what the heck?
yeah. And it just goes faster and faster. My daughter is in year 10, and last night we were talking about selecting subjects for 11 and 12. Like, blink, and they are almost
Yeah.
adults.
Yeah.
So, yes, and I am the daughter of self employed parents. My parents had their own business from when I was 8 to 19. And my biggest wish for the clients that I work with is to be able to have more time with their family. Like, we didn't have a terrible childhood, it was great, but we never had mum and dad together. And we went on one holiday in that time for 1 week with both of them because somebody always had to be working. They both couldn't go away together. And making sure that I can help tradies have that time is the most important thing to me, because, as I say, before you know it, your kids are adults and
Yeah.
they're out of the house and you can't get that time back. And I think it's something that we put off. We think, well, next year will be better, next year will be better, next year will be better, and then all of a sudden they're adults. So we want to help alleviate that.
Mm.
So I also wanted to ask, what was something that you got out of the program that you didn't expect to?
Something I got out of the program that I didn't expect. So one thing I want to mention, which I really, really got a lot out of, was it being in a group setting. Um, I think there was so much value in that because you got these other businesses in there, and you're getting all this information and all these stories from them, um, and you can relate straight away. And I also found myself, giving some valuable information out as well. And I thought, oh wow, I kind of I do know a little bit, I know a little bit more than I'm letting myself onto. So that's something I really enjoyed, and I highly advocate for. I think it's, the group sessions are amazing. The other thing, there's a couple, I guess there's a couple in there. One, um, the bank accounts, right? So I didn't, I used to run everything out of just one account. Everything came in, everything come out. And I remember thinking, okay, well, that's a lot of accounts, but all right, I'll lean into it. I'll do it. And I was surprised at how quickly it made sense.
Hmm.
I remember that first week, first lot of pays come in, went to do my first lot of allocations, and I'm thinking, this is not going to work. Like,
So this
I'm
is a
going to have
good
to
point
build,
to bring up
yeah,
here. So you would have been a few weeks into the program by then, and you're still like, "Yeah, this is not gonna work," which is again really, really common. People are like, "We get
yeah,
it, Katie, but actually, how's that gonna work?" Until you get to this point and you
yeah,
actually start doing the do.
yeah, that's right. So that was a big thing too, having everything separated. It just made it clearer straight away.
Hmm.
And I think that's something I didn't realize would happen so quickly. And then the other thing which is sort of really happened over time, which we spoke about earlier, is the space that I have
Hmm.
now. So I didn't realize how much, like, I think, when you when you're sort of struggling with your money, it takes up so much of your capacity. And I didn't realize how much it affected, every single aspect of my life. Like, my anxiety was through the roof. I was as stressed as anything. I probably wasn't very nice to get along with. I think it affected my communication with my wife quite dramatically. So to come out of that now and realize how much, yeah, just how much space I've got for other things in my life, I think that's been really powerful.
Hmm. And just being able to, and I mentioned this before, if I know that's an outcome that we all get when we work together, but if I would have said that at the start, you would have thought I was crackers.
Yeah,
And yeah, yeah, so it's nice, it's so nice to hear you say that, because it's something that it doesn't matter how much I try to explain that outcome until you actually feel it yourself. You just think,
Yeah.
oh, that can't happen. That's not going to
Yeah.
happen.
Yeah.
Or I'm okay, I'm good, I've got plenty of space, until you
Yeah.
actually get the space and then you realize how little space
Yeah.
you had.
That's right. And in my experience, my all right, I've got work jack and I've got home jack. All right. They're separate, but they are so intertwined, right? If I'm struggling with work, it affects my family. If I'm struggling at home, if my family's struggling, it affects my business. It just does. So, and what I've noticed, I took that first little leap and I did some work on my business, and that gave me a little bit of space to work on myself. And then I gained more confidence to look even further into my business and think about, all right, what do I really want out of this? Where do I want my business to go? How do I want my business to look in, 3, 5, 10, 20 years?
Mm.
And it's like they're coming side by side, and I'm moving forwards in each one. And it's yeah, like I'm not the person I was, 2 years ago, not at all.
And for the better, for the much
Yep,
better.
for the better. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. So, so good to hear. And I think it's that what I hear you say is that before you didn't think, you couldn't even see that as an option, that you could improve both of you along the way. And then now this has opened that up. And it's like, oh, okay. And so now,
Yeah,
it's limitless what you can do. You
yeah,
can,
that's exactly right. That's exactly right. And even like I finished my apprenticeship, and I was like, oh, I'm going straight in to do my Cert 4. I'm going to get my builder's reg. I'm going to do this, and that. A couple of years in the business, I said, I'm not doing that. I do not want the responsibility. I don't want to go near it. I can't even think about it. I don't have the space. Like, I'm not going to study. What the heck? It's not happening.
mm.
And now I'm thinking, oh yeah, I can do that. And all right, how am I going to do it? What's the next step?
And it opens up that choice. So now you can entertain the idea. Do I want to do that? What are my options? It's not a hard yes or a hard no. It's like, oh, actually, this could work. And then you can still choose not to
Yeah,
do it if you like. But now, as you say, you've got that space to be able to like rationally think it through rather than just make rash decisions.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. That's exactly right. And I think another thing that happens, I think in business too, is this imposter syndrome. So you're working and working and working, and you're in it. You're in the thick of it, and you can like I was so focused on what wasn't working that I couldn't see the things that were.
hmm.
And now you've got some space. You think, okay, I have fixed this. I have improved that. Things are looking good. Oh, okay. Maybe I'm not just all right, I'm a tradie, all right, I'm a carpenter, but to try and move from that to being a business owner, I think I'm not a business owner. What do you mean? I'm just a tradie.
So again, so interesting you say this. I hear from a lot of tradies that I work with, I'm just a dumbass electrician, builder, carpenter. And I'm like, no,
Yeah,
you're not. And so it's nice to hear that you can actually finally see yourself as the business owner as well, not just the chippy. Because,
yeah,
as you say, within the group coaching sessions, being able to realize that you have a lot of information and knowledge that you just didn't have the confidence to share,
yeah,
and now that then makes you somebody who within the industry can help change the industry, because the industry as a whole, is a little bit sucky at times. And we have to just one by one helping educating everybody in the industry. Now, I'm sure there's plenty of people in the industry who shouldn't be here, and that's fine. But for the majority of those who are very good at what they do, but like you were previously, just can't see any other options and are just so consumed by so many different things that
yeah.
they can't see their worth. They can't see how they can help others. And this kind of has helped you open up and realize that
Yeah,
you,
that's exactly right. And I think there's something missing. So, for myself, for example, like, I did not belong in high school at all. I
mm,
was a bit of a pain. So, sort of, I think coming up to the end of year 10, there was a big group of guys that were just very encouraged to just get out. We don't want you here. You don't want to be here. Just move along. And I was lucky enough that I knew I wanted to be a carpenter. Two
mm,
of my uncles were carpenters, and I think mum even so they didn't do work experience at my high school.
yeah.
but I think she took me out of school for a couple of weeks to go and work on his house. He was building his house in Churnside Park, and I was like, this is for me. So I was lucky enough that I knew I wanted to do that.
Mm.
But between that, I went and did my pre-app, got my job, trade schooling throughout. They do not tell you how to run a business. They do not tell you what can go wrong and what to do when those things go wrong.
Mm.
It's not there. It's almost like you've got to go out, stuff it up, and then find out the answers.
And in your situation, you were just lucky enough to have somebody else on site who you noticed was doing something differently, and then you had the
Yep.
courage to speak up and ask. Otherwise, the
Yeah.
cycle just continues, and we have all
Yeah.
these tradies who are just working their butts off, stressing out, missing out on family time, because
Yeah.
they don't know that there's a solution out there. And again, working with me is not the only solution, but I always encourage everybody to just put their hand up and just start investigating, having chats with different people to see what's a good fit. Like you did, notice that another person in your trade was doing something differently and was improving, saying, "Hey, like, what are you doing? What's your secret?" And it shouldn't be
Yeah.
a secret. And
Yeah.
that's what we want to get rid of that. We go do our trade, we work for somebody for a while, we go out on our own, we make all these mistakes, we get into a heap of debt, and then eventually, if you're lucky, you might find a way out, and then you've got to dig yourself out for the next couple of years. Like, let's try and remove that step. That's
Yeah.
that's my goal. So I want to finish up with one final question. Um, if you had to give those listening one piece of advice, what would that be?
So I think if you're like, obviously, if you're listening to this, there's something that's caught your attention. Um, just like when I read the book, I was like, wow, this book is written for me. There's so many things in it. And I'm like, this is it. So I think if you've got an interest, give it a go. And and second to that, I you don't have to be in a specific spot to start. I I waited until I was sort of okay with potentially talking to someone about the issues in my business to sort of pull my head up and give it a go. If I had have if I had to put my hand up a year, 2 years, even 5 years earlier, like I can only imagine how much stress that would have taken away. And fixing the problems early.
Mm,
Even coming up to the end of last year, I noticed I kept running out of cash in my operating expenses.
mm,
And I'm looking at it and I'm going, okay, well, it's specifically in the operating expenses. So why is that? What's going on? Um, and I ran through it. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. So, wages have gone up, superannuation's gone up, petrol's gone up, all of these things have gone up. Okay. So there's the issue. I can see it. I can see exactly what it is and deal with it right now, rather than waiting 5 years and going grey. And
And that's a perfect example. And one of the benefits of having the multiple bank accounts is you could identify what bank account was short, and then that helps you identify what's the cause of that. And then you went and fixed that. So rather than thinking, oh, I need to do more work, or I need to do more of this job or that job, or throwing spaghetti at a wall, you were able to really clearly identify. For you, it was a pricing issue, and you
yep,
went and you had the conversations around that. You got your rate changed, and now that was all solved quite quickly, as opposed
yeah,
to, as you say,
absolutely.
just trying to
Yeah,
work it
because
out.
if you, yeah, if it's not just going to fix itself.
Hmm.
And I tried for years to power through and just make it work. I even remember I can't remember exactly when it was. I remember thinking it was a very specific moment. I was like, my God, I really have to make this work. Like I've got one more shot. I have to make this work. I felt so stuck because I clearly couldn't go and get a job because I hated that. But also, was struggling to run a business. I had nowhere to go. Um,
And I think that's a perfect point to highlight there is so many people are in that situation, but so many people just choose this is how it is. This is
Yeah,
what it's like. We struggle. Tradies always struggle. All my mates are talking about the struggle. When I
yeah,
always say to them, that doesn't have to be the norm. Let's change that. And I just say, do a bit of work, invest in yourself, do the work, and you're going to be able to make the changes.
yeah. And actually, that that makes me think too. Like, I got into a really bad habit of not spending a cent on myself.
Mm,
Why would I? Why would I put any money into myself? Even, buying a pair of no, I'm not buying a new pair of jocks, so I can't pay my bills. So I'm putting any money into myself. So to change that around, to invest in myself, um, like I truly see the value in it. Whatever you put in, you get back tenfold, if not more. I think it's such an important thing to do, because it's not even nearly a waste of money to put in to invest in your training, or
mm,
in your development. I think it's so important to do, and I wish I had done that earlier.
mm. Awesome. Thank you so much, Jack. This has been amazing. You were a great client and continue to be. You reach out when you have questions, which is my big thing. It's whether we're working together ongoing or not. I always say to all my clients, make sure you reach out. And I think that's also key, is to, you don't just go and, for example, do my program and then that's it. There's always going to be that ongoing support if you reach out and say, hey, what's going on here? I need help. And for sometimes, we've had a few conversations. Sometimes it's just been me reassuring you that you actually do know what you're talking about.
Yeah,
Because
that's right. I
sometimes we
remember.
have those wobbles. We're like, oh no, actually, do I really
Yeah,
know? Have I learnt that stuff or not?
yeah.
So yeah, you've been a great student, and it's so nice to see the progress that you've made. It's so nice to know that your boys have you home on the weekends, that your wife has a much nicer husband. Um, that's yeah, that's awesome. So thank you so much.
And thank you too, Katie. It's it's been such a positive process. And like I said before, like, my life's completely changed. My business has completely changed, and I feel like I'm a much better husband, employer, and business owner, for that. So thank you very much for the work that you do.